What is Islam? What are the sources of Islam? What are the sources of Islam? What is Islam?
Burada sen ifşa oldun.
Nereye?
Gidiyorum. Hi, this is Edip Yuksel. 13 June 2019. English is my fifth language, therefore don't make fun of my accent. Try to speak fifth language. Today I want to expose one professor, but in fact it is about almost all Middle Eastern studies professors. Let's listen first him, and you will hear very important things if you are studying in Middle Eastern studies, in religious studies, and you better listen to this. As a student, it's your responsibility not to be fooled by frauds. And my contention is, I argue that those people who are in faculties of Middle Eastern studies, they are there not because they have honest, sincere interest in knowledge and truth. They are there for political reasons. They are utilized for some other interest. And this gentleman I'm talking is one in case, but I will share with you some very important information. You should not be manipulated by them. If you are a seeker of the truth, be wary of them. They are frauds. They have sold their souls. Of course, they talk better than I do. English is their mother tongue. They are fluent. And sometimes they pronounce Arabic pretty well. When they talk, you think they know a lot, but they are full of themselves. And they escape from discussing this issue, debating face to face with those people who they marginalize. And I am in the margin. I am so happy to be in margin. I didn't sell myself to this establishment. I will share with you some documents, some facts, and this is an exposition. And if you have any interest in truth on these issues, on Middle Eastern studies, on religion, on Islam and Christianity, feel free to contact me and invite me to your university. I am ready to face any of those pretentious guys. Okay? And this guy I'm talking about, he's referring to my work, he's dismissing it, but he's a good calculating murderer. He's getting away with all those lies, and he is hired for the sheer of keeping the so-called Muslim world in darkness, in superstitions, in backwardness. That is his job. He's paid for that. Some of them have other duties. They are paid indirectly by other forces. Some CIA hires many of these people. I'm not sure about this guy, but I know 100% he's serving the interests of Saudi Arabia, this guy. And the interest of Saudi Arabia and military-industrial complex and other companies and oil companies is to keep backward. To keep backward. Backward but submissive. So that they can be milked like cows. That is his job. He's hired specifically for that because he looks much smarter than what he's promoting. He's promoting Hadith and Sunnah which is filled with filth, with lies, with contradictions, with pedophilia, with misogyny, with superstitions, with contradictions, with so many insults to Prophet Muhammad. So much contradiction, pile of garbage. But he wants Muslim world to, like flies, rotate around this pile of garbage and pick some food, some proteins from that toxic, smelly, stinky garbage. His job is that. He's paid for that. And what he's doing in the video that I will be sharing with you, he's calculating and he's dismissive of this great book. In fact, some of the work here, a few pages, could be a doctorate dissertation for any in a decent university. They just look at the introduction where I compare in the beginning I compare on some verses some translations, the common translations to my translation, and about 15 verses as sample. And but he picks one issue and distorts it and then dismisses the whole entire work. Why? In order to promote hadith garbage, which is really practiced, put in action by ISIS. ISIS put the Sunni religion in action. Mullahs are putting the Shiite religion in action. ISIS is the one that Sunni religion justifies slavery. ISIS owns slave. Justifies concubines. Did it. Pedophilia, hadith books, Sunni books, exactly. Killing anyone who rejects their religion is murtad, is in Sunni, all Sunni sects. Or stoning people to death, all four sects. Burying women alive in black sacks, all Sunni sects. Except Hanafi says, if woman is not beautiful enough, may show her face. Other than that, all three sects, women must cover their faces even. No identity. Slave, pure slave of man. And hell is filled with women. But prisons are filled with men. The history filled with dictators and pharaohs and Stalins and Hitlers and Bushes, all murderers, men, but somehow justice will be the other way around in God's universe. When we go to God, well, majority of hell will be women. And women will be, right now in the world, in the category of dogs, which needs to be kept away, and even black dogs should be killed according to hadith, and pigs and donkeys. And women, if they pass in front of your prayer is nullified. These books. Prophet Muhammad was a pedophile according to these books. He is inviting us, the Muslim world, to rotate around the garbage pile, toxic garbage, stinky garbage pile, and pick some proteins from that. And this guy will guide us. He's a good fly. Maybe he considers himself a bee. He will find some nectars there, maybe some flowers will be flourishing among this garbage pile of from Ibn Filan, from Abu Filan narrations. Okay, let's listen to this guy. And he's here, Jonathan Brown. He's a young man, he's slick, beautiful English. When he talks Arabic, you think, oh, he knows a lot. But either he's an idiot or he's an imposter. His job is to deceive so-called Muslim or Sunni and Shiite world, to keep them backward, to keep them in barbaric shape, so that they will not progress, so that they will be cows to be milked by progressive, pro-rights countries, powerful countries, imperialistic countries. That's the job. Or they become subservient of the dictators and sultans. Because they are ignorant, they become ra'aya. In fact, they are called ra'aya. Anyway, he holds the Al-Walid bin Talal Chair of Islamic Civilization at Georgetown University. That is his job. And I will share with you some. Let's listen to him, and then I will share with you this one and my letter to Texas University at Austin 20 years ago, and maybe Michigan Law Review very briefly. This is from Professor. This is the only law review that doesn't have footnotes. The only law review by Robert Williams. He's a great guy. In fact, I took many years ago, 20-some years ago, my gosh, Indian law from him. The law of indigenous people. Yep. Vampires Anonymous. Talks about some professors. And Palgrave's, 2006, where they were going to, this is my translation, but they delayed. Why? Why they postponed? Why they canceled? Why? And why I was not accepted to University of Austin, Texas, though the head of the committee, which was going to hire, he was the one who invited me. Because he knew my work, that I would be great asset as a professor at the University of Texas at Austin. And then upon his insistence, it was Professor Kurzman, I wrote to Dr. Harold Leibowitz, chairman of the Department of Middle Eastern Languages and Cultures, the University of Texas at Austin. And guess what happened? He told me exactly why I'm marginalized, why this guy is hired. Let's listen to him, and I will tell you my story and more interesting things about my father's experience with Saudi Arabia, the head of the snake in the Middle East.
His precedent.
I hope it will change. Saudi Arabia, by the way, it doesn't mean always it will be like that. I hope they will decide to change instead of promoting this backward, oppressive, made up, false religion and turn back to the teaching of the Quran, which enlightens, which frees humans from being slave of religious scholars and clergymen, and brings justice, diversity, tolerance, freedom, which is foreign in Sunni and Shiite religions and in Catholic religion. And let's listen to this guy first, few things.
Before our eyes. And this is something that Muslim scholars understood very early on in Islam, and they were, I'm often stunned by their acuity and their intelligence, their wisdom.
They are very
But
intelligent wisdom.
Muslim
Look.
scholars like Safdiyani said, "Al-Kitab ahwaju ila sunnah min as-sunnah ila al-Kitab." The Book of God needs the Sunnah more than the Sunnah needs the Book of God. Or as Yahya bin Abi Kathir and az-Zuhri, early Muslim scholars, also said, that the Sunnah came to govern the Quran. The Quran didn't come to govern the Sunnah. What do they mean by that? They mean that you have to understand the Quran through the Sunnah.
What a shame. Basically, he insulted the Quran. The Quran is God's book, according to him. Of course, I prove that the Quran is Word of God mathematically, and I have challenged atheists all around the world. I have discussed this issue with top atheists in the United States and in Turkey. They lost the arguments, the debate. You may check. In fact, I have discussed this with top religious clergymen in Turkey, Professor Süleyman Ateş. Twice he escaped from the studio. He couldn't engage in Socratic dialogue because he got used to just telling any stories about God and people listen without questioning. And he is also, here is making up the biggest stupid remark about God, about Muhammad, and no one questioning because he pronounced Arabic pretty well. He's fluent, well-groomed, a handsome guy. And he has also titled professor. If he was doing these kind of things in physics, physical sciences, well, it wouldn't fly in labs, in tests. But he can make up any kind of lies, like Catholic priests do. That's fine. If you belong to that group of religious fanatics, bigots, you will accept it. Go different churches, different mosques, different sects, different orders, they all tell different stories about God. And somehow people over there, they take it exactly as a word of God. All contradict, all send each other to hell in the name of God. Ask him, how does he know that the Quran is word of God? What is the proof? Let's say two chapters in the end of the Quran. I bet he doesn't have a convincing answer for that. If he has some people who are not critical thinkers, of course, in front of them he can get away with anything. But let him discuss with an atheist or with a rational monotheist like me. Now, this gentleman, he says the Quran, God's word, needs Muhammad. According to Quran, Muhammad was guided by Quran, not the other way around. Muhammad did not guide God. According to the Quran, God taught Muhammad, not Muhammad teaching God. God explained the Quran. ثُمَّ إِنَّ عَلَيْنَا بَيَانَهُ, the Quran says. We are the one explaining it, not you, Muhammad. In fact, it is specifically tells Muhammad to shut up, not to try to explain the Quran. وَلَا تَعْجَلْ بِهِ لِسَانَكَ. Do not rush with your tongue to explain it. ثُمَّ إِنَّ عَلَيْنَا بَيَانَهُ ثُمَّ إِنَّ عَلَيْنَا قُرْآنَهُ وَبَيَانَهُ جَمْعَهُ وَقُرْآنَهُ. Interesting. And the Quran says the teacher of the Quran is God. Ar-Rahman allama al-Quran. No, they say no, Muhammad thought. Incredible. Just the opposite. The Quran says the Quran is mubin, is obvious. If you use your reasoning, critical thinking, use your reasoning. But the religious people tell, no, do not reason. When you reason, you mess up our religion because it's made up, full of contradiction. It stinks. If you reason, you expose their lies. No, don't reason. You just believe it. Believe what? Why? Why should I believe you? Why don't believe another one? Well, you are born here, you have to believe the one who is close to you. Or believe like your ancestors. Well, contradicts the Quran. The very book says do not follow your ancestors blindly. Question, chapter 17, verse 36, for example. Use your reasoning. No. Follow scholars. Here, Prophet Muhammad, the Quran says, ما كنت تدري ما الكتاب وما الإيمان. Muhammad, you didn't know what is the book, what is Iman, what is faith, what is acknowledgement of the truth. You didn't know that. The Quran guided Muhammad. Muhammad was agnostic. According to Quran, in fact, he was misguided. وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا فَهَدَى. God found you dal, diverted, and guided you. Therefore, the Quran says, أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولِ. Follow God and follow the messenger who delivered the Quran alone. Again, messenger's job is not to make up another decree next to God. Messenger's job is not to make up prohibitions, religious prohibitions. No. In fact, according to Quran, it is blasphemy if you do that. In al-hukm illa lillah. The hukum, the decree belongs to God alone. Mukhlisina lahu din. The system belongs to God alone, not God plus Muhammad plus Muhammad's friend plus this guy, that guy plus Bukhari. No. It's only God's religion in the Quran, containing the Quran. And the Quran says the Quran is mufassal, detailed, fully detailed. Nope, they say nope, the Quran is not detailed. It doesn't tell us where to put our hands while praying. Very interesting. It doesn't tell us where to put our hands in the prayer. And, as if important, stand in the line. They tell you, let's say, from market, you get out in front of the cashier, please stand in the line here. You say, manager or Miss Cashier, where should I put my hands while I'm standing? Do you ask this question? No, because it's frivolous. It's not necessary. It's not important. It's not relevant. Stand there, that's it. As long as you don't put your hand in the pocket of another customer, that's it. Or don't step on their feet. That's it. Stand. You may put your hand like this if you want, or like this, or like this, or maybe you may do like this. It's up to you. Who cares? God doesn't care where you put your hands, as long as you don't put in wrong places, which you know God gave you reasoning. Don't be idiot. While you're praying, maybe it is better not to pick your nose. Correct? Yeah, it's not good. I mean, if you are single praying alone, doesn't care. God doesn't care even if you put in your nose. But for other people, it is disgusting. It's not good. That's it. But they asked this stupid question and they made up stupid lies. 98 hadiths alone. They don't have 98 hadiths about unity of God, oneness of God, or about helping other people, or about freedom. No, 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 no. The important things, they don't have these many. But they have 98 so-called sahih hadiths about where you put your hand while you're praying. Well, according to some hadiths, Prophet Muhammad put his hand on his heart. Makes sense. According to the he put his hadith on his belly button. According to some hadiths, he put his hand under his belly button. I cannot show you. I don't want to play with the camera. And according to some hadiths, he left his hand like this. So many contrary. Well, you asked a stupid question. You came up with all possible combinations of where you put your hand. You defeated the purpose of that stupid question. And you end up busying people with 98 different narrations, starting with from min ibn falan, min Abu Falan, from this person to another, he says stories. Centuries after Prophet Muhammad. You don't need that. Or how many units, we don't know. Hadith explains it. Who cares? God doesn't care. If God cared, in his fully explained Mufassal Mubin book, Tafsilan li kulli shay, says the Quran says, explain everything, God would be able to explain to you 2 units, 3 units. It's very easy because God repeats some of the things. Instead of repeating so many things, maybe in few words God would tell you, but it's not relevant, it's not important. As God told Jewish people in the beginning of chapter 2, verse about 50, the beginning of chapter 2, Al-Baqarah, heifer. God asked them to sacrifice a heifer in order to save them from the cultural assimilation, cultural imperialism of Pharaoh, because when they were slaves, they were also influenced by the religion of their oppressors. Like slaves came here, African slaves, and they were made Christians, the religion of their oppressors. They become even more religious Christian than Christians themselves. Like Kenyatta said, you remember? Kenyatta. The missionaries came to Kenya, to our country. They said, they had Bibles in their hand, we had our lands. They said, let's close our eyes and pray. We closed our eyes and prayed. And when we opened our eyes, we found out that they have our lands, we have the Bible in our hands. Same. Heifer, God says sacrifice heifer in order mentally, psychologically, entirely get over that respect towards the heifer, symbol of oppression, slavery, Pharaoh. is religion. And guess what? They missed the point. Some of the rabbis, clergymen like him, they say, well, it's not enough. It's not detailed. What kind of heifer? Is it old or young heifer? Very interesting. The Quran tells us in order not to ask frivolous, stupid questions. It distracts from the real thing, from real life, from the most important thing. It keeps you busy with stupid, trivial stuff. And what is the color of heifer? What is in the barn or farm? There's this question. The Quran, the beginning of chapter 2, it tells us this story, and then God criticized them. They almost were not able to sacrifice a heifer. By what? By asking this frivolous question. Where do I put my hand? How many units? The ablution, the verse about ablution, just one verse, few words explains everything, enough. But they say, whether I put water in my nose or not, whether I do this to my ear, they ask this question, they came up with a book full of answers, and contradictory, of course, because each sex have their own made-up rules. And then your mind is kept busy with this frivolous, stupid stuff, and you forgot to become a free man, a reasonable man. You don't really support each other. You don't study knowledge and sciences because you have volumes of books to really learn about religion. Sunnah, he uses the word sunnah, but he contradicts the Quran. He doesn't care about the Quran. The word sunnah, according to Quran, means laws. God's law, it is used for God's law. Sunnatullah, God's law. وَلَن تَجِدَ لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَبْدِيلًا وَلَن تَجِدَ لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَحْوِيلًا. If you don't know Arabic, I'm saying for those people who are impressed by this Arabic, forgive me. Because there are those kind of people who are impressed. Or there are some people who need reference. I provide for them so that they search the Quran, they find it. And the word Sunnatullah means God's law. They turn it to Sunnat Muhammad. A God besides God. In fact, they take God's Sunnah law, they attribute to Muhammad. In fact, centuries later, when they come to Sunnah Muhammad, where do I find it? You end up with Bukhari, who came 230 years after Muhammad, or other books. In fact, Bukhari, even the original of Bukhari, we don't have it even 230 years after Prophet Muhammad. It's much later written. We don't have even the original book. But contradictory hadith. According to the hadith books he's peddling in order to keep the Muslim world backward, this is his job. The most authentic hadith, mutawatir hadith, is this hadith. Pay attention. لا تكتبوا عني سوى القرآن. Do not write anything from me besides the Quran. فمن كتبه فليمحه. Whoever has written it should delete it. This is the most authentic hadith book, not according to me, according to these big guys, hadith narrators and collectors, according to them, and hadith sifters, categorizing hadith according to their truth value in 31 categories. Mawdu in the bottom means the fabricated hadith, and top is mutawatir, and it is 31 categories of lies, and they call it science of hadith. Science of sifting protein in garbage, pile of stinky garbage. They're finding some glucose, some sugar, some protein, some nutrients in the garbage of hadith. That's it, the science. That is the most mutawatir. Do not write anything from me besides the Quran. Whoever has written, delete it. And that, guess what? This is the most mutawatir, means it comes from different chain of narration according to their rules. The most different chains, this here say, and it is the most mutawatir. Well, they trash it because they make up another hadith. They say, well, in fact, I ordered you not to write from me, now you can write. But somehow they didn't write until Bukhari. Why the most authentic book comes 230 years after Muhammad if Muhammad gave permission in his lifetime? Think, but they want you not to think. In fact, in the very book, there is a hadith. I have spent too much time on this, but I have to, because in the end, he comes here, talks about me, my book. He trashes it, dismisses it deceptively, based on false argument, and he ignores all my argument in this book. Anyway, another hadith, Prophet Muhammad in his deathbed says, bring me all prominent Sahabas, means his friends, are present there. Abu Bakr and Umar and others. According to this hadith, again, they're Sahih hadith books. 6 idols besides the Quran they have. And then, according to that hadith, Prophet Muhammad, he's sick in his deathbed. He says, bring me paper and pen, let me write it down something so that you will not be diverted after me. Interesting. In fact, as a side note, shows that Muhammad knew how to write. Read and write. In fact, according to Quran, he knew. Al-Ummi means Gentile, not people of the book. But he knew how to write and write, but he was not kind of studying Bible and stuff. The Quran uses as a contrasting with Ahl al-Kitab, but they mistranslated, distorted meaning al-Ummi to someone who's illiterate. In fact, they insult their idol. In one way, they praise Muhammad more than God. In fact, I say Allah, God, they don't care about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, falan, falan. And in many ways, they make him God, because here it is, he says, it is above the Quran. The Sunnah Muhammad is beyond the Quran. He governs the Quran. Well, you made Muhammad govern God. God's word is below Muhammad's Sunnah. Muhammad's Sunnah means whatever he does. Incredible. And he says, bring me paper and pen, let me write down something. Again, it contradicts their lie, which insults Prophet Muhammad's intelligence. For 23 years, he dictates the book, the most important thing in his life. He dictates it to other scribes, but he cannot learn in 23 years 28 letters. He must be an idiot. Their character. In hadith books, Muhammad is an idiot, is more merciful than God. In the story of Mi'raj, he negotiates the number of prayers a day from 50 a day, means every 28 minutes one prayer. He negotiates by getting advice from Moses, who is in 6th heaven, and he goes up and down in elevator between God and Moses. Supposedly he negotiates the prayers from 50 to 40. He's more merciful than God. But he's not smart enough to know that it's impossible 50 prayers a day. And God is also not merciful at all. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. God, according to them, is lying. Because here God ordered people more than their capacity. Every 28 minutes, whole day, 24 hours. You cannot work, you cannot sleep. And at that time they didn't have even digital watches. They could even calculate every 28 minutes one time. It's not units, time. And they made Muhammad more merciful than God, but in other, Muhammad, in the story of Bukhari and others that called Urayna and Uqayla tribes, these are the keywords I'm giving for those who want to search for it. And then he arrests some people who are suspect of killing his shepherd. He chops their arms and legs, and then gets hits them up, and then with hot nails gouges their eyes, and then leave them thirsty, and even does not allow his companions to serve them water while they are dying from thirst. And this is their prophet. Or prophet put a woman on 2 horses and split into 2. Or sent a terrorist group nighttime called Syria to kill a woman, a poet, who supposedly criticized Muhammad. Terrorist, killer, oppressive dictator, according to them. And pedophile. Supposedly married Aisha while she was 6 years old, and entered the same bed while she was 9, while he was 54 years old. These are biggest insult to Prophet Muhammad. And then basically they want us to follow. And then according to that hadith, Prophet Muhammad tells people to bring, I know, I diverted from intelligence to all these things. And then one of the Sahaba rushes to bring paper and pen, and then Umar, according to hadith, stops him. Says, no, Prophet Muhammad is sick, he has fever, he doesn't know what he's saying. Hasbuna kitabullah, God's book is enough for us. He's lying. He says, that time they were not saying God's book is enough for us. Big lie. Abu Hanif, he was tortured, imprisoned during Umayyad and Abbas time because he didn't follow hadith. Therefore, Abu Hanif, which later a fabricated sect was invented in his name because he was legend among monotheists, he didn't follow hadith. He didn't follow hadith. Therefore, he was criticized by Shafi'i ulama. Al-Shafi'i wrote a book, Jumal al-Ilm, Ijmal al-Ilm, I think it is. Anyway, I forgot the name of the book. Aisha Musa translated that book. He wrote that book against Hanafi, Abu Hanif, the monotheist, and his friends, that hadith is needed to defend hadith. He wrote that book early. In fact, they claimed them Zanadik and diverted and not Muslims. They were not even praying after them. The Shafi'i sect, initially, they were not even praying after those who followed Hanif, Abu Hanif, who rejected hadith. Therefore, Bukhari does not even narrate a single hadith from Abu Hanif. Hello? Big lies. But his job is to make up lies. And you cannot test these lies in laboratory. It's not scientists. In his convention, in his political position, his job to peddle these lies will keep the so-called Muslim world backward, misogynist, and in a very bad situation, and prone to elect dictators and not having freedom. And it serves the interests of some imperialist groups, some big corporations. And anyway, therefore, even the lost words in Hujjatul Wada, according to them, was witnessed by 100,000 Sahaba, now 80,000, sometimes even they exaggerate the number, and even the last words contradictory. Supposedly most people heard this. Well, you're the most so-called authentic hadith must be this one. It's not a hadith, not one Sahaba heard. It's according to you, tens of thousands heard Prophet Muhammad's last sermon, and the last words of the last sermon comes in 3 different versions. And guess what? The most narrated version says, I left you Quran, follow the Quran. But there is another competing alternative version says the same thing. The most important, crucial point, I left you Quran and Sunnati, as opposed to God's Sunnah. I left you both. In another one, I left you Quran and Ahli Bayti. Oh, Shiite and Sunni, they just distort, they make up in order to promote their own sect. You don't need to be too smart, detective. Just a little bit reasoning, you find out. The original one, I left you the Quran, as in chapter 6, verse 19 says, as in chapter 25, verse 30 says. Muhammad's only complaint in the day of judgment will be, وَقَالَ رَسُولُ يَا رَبِّ إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. My people deserted the Quran. Or in chapter 6, verse 19, قُلْ أُوحِيَ إِلَيَّ هَذَا الْقُرْآنُ لِأُنذِرَكُمْ بِهِ وَمَنْ بَلَغَ. This book, the Quran has revealed to me in order to deliver to you and those who receive it. To warn you with and those who receive it. That's it. Not Quran and Hadith. In fact, the word Hadith throughout the Quran, when it is mentioned other than the Quran, it is negative. Like Hadith and Yuftara. Hadith and Yuftara. Lawwa al-Hadith. Interesting. But for the Quran, Ahsan al-Hadith. And the word Sunnah is always for Sunnatullah, for God. Anyway, now again, in their own books, there are so many contradictions. Bukhari came 230 years later. Among 600,000 hadiths, supposedly he collected he thought that 7,215 of them was authentic. He trashed more than 98% of it, and we see why he ended up with. He ended up with all kind of contradiction, stupid nonsense, an insult to Prophet Muhammad. And the Quran says, if someone makes up one lie, become a witness, false witness, do not accept any more his testimony. In chapter, I think, chapter 24. No more. It is in case of if someone falsely testifies someone commit adultery and says, if you prove that he's doing false testimony, never accept his testimony anymore. That's it. But it is for one occasion. But these guys making up lies in the name of God and Muhammad that can put people's lives at risk, like stoning people to death, like killing the murtad, the apostates, or so many prohibition, God's blessings, or music, prohibiting music, or chess, or killing black dogs, or many other things, or basically putting women in black sacks, burying them alive in black sacks, even covering their faces. According to 3 sects, it is mandatory to cover women's face. Contrary to the verses of the Quran. For example, a verse of the Quran says, even their beauty interests you, women's beauty interests you, Muhammad, you cannot marry anymore. What is the beauty of women if they are in black sacks? You cannot even distinguish them. You don't have even identity. Even it could be a bearded man in black sacks, in chadori, in veil. You will not even know. But the Quran says their beauty. That means the Muslim woman, their beauty was obvious to others. But that means based on these hadiths, you can do all these things. Anyway, let's see.
The Quran tells you to pray. It doesn't tell you how to pray. It doesn't tell you when to pray. It doesn't tell you how many times to pray.
Big lies. The Quran gives all the details, necessary details of the prayer. And prayer, in fact, there are 2. The word salat in the Quran has 2 meanings. One is connection with God and connection and support with God, and the other connection and support with society. Salat al-Jumu'ah means psychological, political, economical, financial connection, support, solidarity with people and with God. And I have other videos on this. Please watch the video on this one. Because I don't want to forget this one. ISIS, it is ruled out that ISIS follows Sunni religion. Please watch this one. This is a very good
website 19.org, so that our viewers have an idea of who
Okay.
you are and who you represent.
Pictures, family pictures.
Okay. Anyway, and this is okay. Okay. If you can see, speech at British Parliament. I don't know. I am not going to right now. And 19.org. I don't want to forget about this. Check. There are. Manifesto for Islamic Reform online, and also PDF you can download. Also you can find the PDF of this free. And I want to talk about this. Oh my gosh, too much time passed. Let's see.
The Prophet's teachings tell us how to pray, when to pray. The Quran tells you.
Big lie. Big lie. Those details like, heifer's color. What is the color of the heifer? The age. Those kind of things, we don't need it. And those details in those books, we don't need it. In order to follow these details, if you become a pedophile, you become the killers, murderers, stoning people to death, and worshippers of stone, black stones and those, and then oppressing women, and all these sorts of bad things, evil things, if we need to commit. In order to follow these details, we need to do those better not pray at all. It's not a prayer. It's not a divine prayer, it is evil. Anyway, 38.
That did, and that you see applied in books like the Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. They were invented because these scholars knew how many hadiths were forged. As one scholar named Shu'bah ibn al-Hajjaj, he was from the city of Basra, he died around 161 of the Hijri, about 773 or 774 of the Common Era. He said, 3/4 of the hadiths I have come across are forged.
Well, Bukhari says 98% hadith. 98. More than 98, because he collected supposedly 600,000 hadiths. He ended up with 7,000 hadiths. We know what kind of stupid hadiths they are. Fabricated hadiths. And he invites us to that. Anyway.
3/4 of the hadiths I have come across are forged hadiths.
And this gentleman wants us to believe that now he's a good fly. He will navigate around the garbage of hadith, and he will help us to find some nutrients in that garbage, toxic garbage. And we see people, when those go around, we know what kind of people they become. They become idiots, stupid, oppressors, backward, superstitious. Look around the world. About 2 billion supposedly Muslims, Sunni and Shiites. The more religious they become, the most oppressor, the most evil they become. Look at Afghanistan, look at Iran, look at Saudi Arabia, look at ISIS. The most religious they become, the most backward, the most, and this person has vested interest in that. He's getting money to keep the so-called Muslim world in this backward stage. It is Hadith does. Hadith is against your mind, against your spirit, against your life, against your hereafter. It is the biggest lie and insult attributed to God and Muhammad. Imagine, like Catholics, they make up big lies and people swallow those. Imagine worship weapon, worship weapon, worship weapon. I said, weapon, murder weapon. And you say, well, this cross is, our Savior was tortured. We love our Savior and tortured on this. It's murder weapon. You say, we worship this. The biggest lies. But people believe it. Like Hitler's minister of propaganda says, if you want people to believe it, make it bigger lies. The bigger the lies, the more people believe in it. Exactly. Incredible. How can you imagine? A murder weapon is made worship by people who supposedly worship the sacrifice on that murder weapon. Imagine, and they are given wine, say, well, have a sip of this wine, pretend that it is the blood of your Savior. Pretentious cannibalism. And this cookie is his flesh. And they even discuss whether real flesh or not. You remember substantiation, consubstantiation? I even forgot that word. This fancy word, they even argued, Catholic Church, whether really the wine becomes really the blood of Jesus or symbolic. Whether symbolic, pretentious cannibalism or real cannibalism, there is something wrong with this. Not wrong, the word wrong is too small to describe this. The same with this religion. Sunni or Shiite, no different. They come up with the biggest, most stupid lies, and they accept it to lie. Here it is. The Bukhari talks about a verse, stoning to death. They made up this verse. They couldn't insert it to the Quran. And later they came up with this lie. It is in his hadith books. It says, it was written on its skin. It was under Aisha's bed. And then after Prophet Muhammad died, a hungry goat comes and eats this skin. Very interesting. Goat eating dry skin, especially ink on it. And then he eats this verse. Wow. And after Muhammad, well, it is abrogated from the Quran because a holy hungry goat eats it. What a story. You say, well, this is one of the most stupid stories, not the most, one of the most stupid stories I heard. But I love to accept it. It's really good because it is really evil words. الشيخ والشيخة إذا زنيا فارجموهما البتة. The language, in fact, has nothing to do with the Quran. Sheikh, according to Quran, old man. But according to this hadith language, it means supposedly married man and woman. It seems kind of throughout time, several centuries, the meaning of the word changed. Or in the dialect who is fabricating this hadith, it meant that. Anyway, if they commit adultery, stone them to death. And you say, well, thank God it is gone from the Quran, correct? No, not so easy. Not so fast. Though it is textually eliminated, abrogated, mansukh from the Quran, but it is valid in terms of hukm. In 4 sects, you are stoned to death. Not you, usually women are stoned to death if they are shown that they commit adultery. And they do. Oh, ISIS really practiced what is in hadith books. Slavery in hadith, misogyny in hadith, pedophilia in hadith, stoning people to death, chopping people's head because of religion, forcing people to pray. All these in hadith book, and this gentleman wants to justify that. He's well-groomed, he's professor, he talks beautiful English, fluent, Arabic, fusha. When he talks, you think he's full of knowledge, but he's filled with ignorance and deception.
Before, or even 3 generations before Bukhari and Muslim.
Lie.
So, Muslims in the modern period have a question before them. Which sunnah of the Prophet do they take? Which sunnah of the Prophet? The details of the Ramadan.
He's going to sort out nothing. Ask him these questions. Quran reform is this one, Manifesto for Islamic Reform. Call me to challenge. I challenge him. Call me, invite me, all you students, invite me to debate with him. Here, he's easy getting away with murder. Easy, because over there no one is questioning him. They think he knows a lot. He's deceptive. Invite me to have a debate, discussion with him about Quran Reform's translation, which he easily dismisses here. And here it is.
Ramadan fast. You have to abandon things like the specifics of how we do wudu.
Well,
and once you do that,
then with those specifics, the Quran is one statement explains how to do wudu. But you ask trivial questions like rabbis of the past, the color of the heifer, in wudu whether should I put water in my nose or not, whether I wash my mouth or not, who cares? It's not important, it's not relevant. How I clean my hair, my ear and stuff. How should I clean my buttock? Potty training. Most of the hadith books, in fact, the biggest, longest chapter is about how to clean your buttock. In fact, one hadith says it should be odd number of stones. Satan, evil, fabricate the hadith, associating the number of dirty stone with oneness of God. Imagine. Incredible.
abandon the religion of Islam. These are things that all Muslims always agreed upon.
Oh, like Catholics, they say.
It doesn't matter if you're
Trinity. Always everyone believed in Jesus being Son of God and stuff. Lies. They even banned the books, translations of the Bible initially, that rejected the idea of Trinity stuff. But after they eliminated, they claimed them to be heretic and stuff. Oh, there was no one there. Everyone really believed what like Catholic believes or like Protestants believe, like Baptists believe. Big lies. The same with them. I gave you examples of Abu Hanif, how he rejected hadith, and he was tortured in prison during Umayyad and Abbasid times. Not a single hadith is narrated from him in Bukhari. In fact, Shafi ulama rejected him. They called him heretic, zindiq. Huh? In your own hadith, says Abu Huraira was writing, Umar saw Abu Huraira write a hadith. Umar came, kicked him out from masjid, says, are you going to make up Mishnah and Gemara of this ummah? Are you going to make up like Jewish people made up after Torah? In your own hadith. That means the discussion about hadith since the beginning. Hadith books, the most authentic hadith book, yes, is written supposedly by Bukhari 230 years later. If there was no issue, it was be written during the time of Muhammad. They couldn't do it after Muhammad. But somehow it is left 230 years later. And not only that, in fact, they kept writing after 500 years, making up hadith to promote certain agendas of sultans or clergymen. If the guy doesn't like dog, make up hadith. Dogs are dirty, or you kill black dogs. Or if the person is misogynist, maybe no woman liked him, and then he started making up lies against women. The person who is in town did not see buildings, tall buildings, went to town, saw a couple with few floors, tall buildings, said, well, tall buildings are the sign of the end of the world, evil. Made up hadith. The guy could not sell his date. He wanted to sell his date commercial. Hadith is the best way. He says, ajwa dates is cure for what? Sorcery, what is magic? And whatever, few things is mentioned. Cure for everything almost. Ajwa, date. Ajwa is the name of the town. Or they wanted to promote one governor or sultan, turn him to Mahdi. Mahdi will come in Mecca, Medina, or Basra, Damascus, Yemen. And somehow Mahdi appears in all of those places because when those hadiths were fabricated, the Sultan was there. It was fabricated by someone who is in Medina or in Damascus. He was trying to promote that Sultan or governor as a Mahdi. A hadith is the best way to do this. It's lies, propaganda. For everything. Misogynists, they filled most of the hell with women, or put women in the category of dog, pig, and donkey. If women and these pass in front of the prayer is nullified. Many. If a person doesn't like music, says, well, music is haram. Or wanted, he's jobless, he doesn't do anything except this supposedly prayer, and then make up lies about, well, these many times if you pray, you go to heaven and stuff. And a lot of also Jewish Christian stories entered tradition, like circumcision from through hadith. Christians imported their tradition through that. Christians, I say, it was Jewish.
Doesn't matter if you're Hanafi or Maliki, they always agree on this. So to leave these practices to go outside the bounds of Islam.
Big liar you are.
Not in Sunni Islam, not read the Quran through the Sunnah of the Prophet. Then they disagree about what the Sunnah of the Prophet is. If you're Hanbali, you believe it's maybe a little bit more hadiths. If you're Hanafi, maybe you rely more on... All these groups, they all agree the Quran is not read on its own. You cannot have the Quran only.
Lie.
It's always read through the Sunnah.
Lie. Read the Quran.
And there's...
hundreds of verses he can't...
One translation, actually, of the Quran, I found it very interesting when I read it. It's by actually a Turkish scholar, but he lives in the United States. He lives in Arizona. His name is Edip Yuksel. And he has a translation of the Quran called the Reformist Quran, the Reformist Quran. And he says that this is the first Quran-only translation of the Quran. It doesn't rely on any hadiths. It doesn't rely on any tradition.
I'm not saying first. Before me, it was Dr. Rashad Khalifa. I worked together with him. But years after him, I found out there were some errors, in fact, in his translation. Together we work on that translation. But with time we're learning because we're trying to purify ourselves from the influence of Sunni teachings and Hadith teaching. It was not just one night we couldn't. We rejected Hadith, but their subconscious influence on us, it was continued because some of the meaning of the word, we didn't even question. We find out, we didn't even question. We need to check. And therefore it took time, and this is the translation, and the story of this translation is interesting. It was here, you can stop and read. In the beginning, I have comparison with three other translations. I prove my case. Even if you don't know Arabic, you check. I am able over there to show how they distort the meaning of words and verses. And I want to talk a few things on these ones, and I hope I will have time.
Where you just get the
I may have the second volume of this one.
And he says, the author or the translator says, that in order to understand the Quran, he only looks at the way that the Quran uses words in different locations. So if I don't know what a word means in this verse, I look at other verses where the word appears, and that way I understand it. And sometimes I actually appreciate it, but sometimes he's very honest. So, for example, the Quran says, we give you Kawthar. What is Kawthar? He says, I have no idea what Kawthar is. Because there's no way for him to tell. And I thought, wow, maybe I've come across the first really honest Quran-only book, where this person, he says, I'm only going to use the Quran, and really I'm only going to use the Quran. But then I found something which revealed that inconsistency, that inevitable inconsistency that will always trip up, will reveal the weakness of the Quran-only approach in the concept of dhihar.
Oh,
والذين يظاهرون منكم من نسائهم ما هن أمهاتهم, right? Those in Surah Al-Mujadala, those amongst you who do dhihar, yudhahiruna, of their women, they are not their mothers. Now, this doesn't make any sense if you're just using Arabic grammar. If you go and you look this verb dhahara, yudhahiru, if you look at all the other places in the Quran where this word is used, it means to grant assistance to somebody. But in the beginning of Surah Al-Mujadala, it talks about those people who do dhihar to their wives. They're not their mothers. And if those people who do dhihar to their wives take their wives back, then they have to free a slave. What the heck does this mean? Imagine you've looked at all the other parts of the Quran, look at this verb dhahara, and it only means to grant assistance to people. And I thought maybe this translator, this Quran-only translator, will be honest and he'll say, I don't know what this means. But he didn't. He said, those people who say to their wives, you are like the back of my mother to me. These are not their mothers. And if you say this and then you take your wife back, you have to free a slave. So how did this translator understand the meaning of the verse? He looked in Arabic dictionaries and looked up dhahara, and he said one of the meanings is to say to your wife, you're like the back of my mother to me, which is a way of the pre-Islamic Arabs would divorce their wives. And the Quran basically disapproves of this act. So this translator could say, but I didn't look at hadiths, I didn't look at the Sunnah of the Prophet, I looked at a dictionary. The problem is, where do you think Arabic dictionaries came from? Arabic dictionaries today come from earlier Arabic dictionaries, and earlier Arabic dictionaries come from the earliest Arabic dictionaries, books like Kitab al-Ain of al-Khalil ibn Ahmed in the early 800s, or the work of early Muslims who went around during the early decades, the first 150 years of Islam, collecting rare words from Bedouins.
Okay. Now, this guy appears to be reasonable. First of all, he dismisses many great points in this translation. Many great points. He doesn't appreciate any of those. There are many corrections, major corrections of his sources. And he doesn't show the honesty to acknowledge those. And second, this is supposedly the word zihar. He says you cannot understand without dictionaries. First of all, dictionaries are not like hadith, even if it is produced by the followers of hadith and sunnah and stuff. It's a little bit different because the language is spoken by other people too, by Christians, by agnostics, by Jewish people. There are many people who are speaking Arabic or studied Arabic. You cannot just easily change the things. Yes, there are some terminology, some words deliberately changed. We can easily find out by studying. But it is not that easy to change the meaning of a word as you make up hadith. Make up any hadith about Muhammad, people just say, I heard from this, as he acknowledges there were thousands of hadiths made up, because easy. But you cannot make up thousands of meaning, you cannot make up meanings for thousands of different words, especially its dictionary, because that language is already spoken by people. And therefore, it is not the same. He kind of confuses the things. Second, when I look at the dictionaries, I'm critical of the dictionaries because they can be influenced by hadith, by the teachings and stuff. Therefore, critically evaluate, look at the language. But I don't need even to look at the language to understand the meaning of zihar, first. Second, even if I don't understand the meaning of zihar, it doesn't make a iota of difference. Again, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything. Let's say put X there. You don't understand. Neither your faith will be influenced, neither your practice, nothing will change. But if you believe in hadith, you will stone people to death. You will prohibit something who is useful, like, let's say, shrimp in some sects is prohibited. Or prohibit music. All bash women. Put them in black sacks if you believe in hadith. He wants us, again, what is trade-off? If I don't follow hadith, I will not do those evil things. But I will know the meaning of zihar. My gain is that, my loss, I will become evil. Including pedophilia, including slavery. But what is my trade-off if I follow the Quran? The worst case scenario. I don't need the meaning of X, zihar, which is an old tradition. If I don't do that, nothing will happen. Do X. But I will not associate partner with God. I will not attribute all those lies to Prophet Muhammad. I will not commit like slavery or pedophilia, all these things, or kill people because they, let's say, insult Muhammad. All these things. Or have thousands of rituals to follow. Ablution is whole things, many things you do. Or prayer, oh my gosh. I remember in prison, when I was political prison, someone goes in, we had only one bathroom in the whole ward, and he was entering and coming out, and then walking, going back in the restroom. He was peeing, but after pee, he would insert in cotton in his penis. Because there was hadith, the torture of grave comes from drop of urine. Therefore, he was trying to avoid even a molecule of urine, and he was so kind of influenced by those hadiths, he was turning to that. He turned to, oh my gosh. I had to prohibit him because there was a line in front of one single restroom. We had about 30 people there early morning, and now I say, nope, you stayed behind. He was doing that. He was inserting cutting his penis and going back in and coming out multiple times. In fact, they do it. In some orders, they are very careful about this. And some even, they put their hands in their pants, they walk like that. It's crazy, stupid. Anyway, here it is. What's my loss? Nothing. But, again, within the context, the meaning of zihar becomes clear. If you use your mind. Not like this professor. He's a professor, but he's ignorant. He's one of the most ignorant guys. Like Catholic professors, like Mormon professors, like Hindu professors, dogmatic, fanatic, do not question anything, follow this tradition, this narration, and that narration. And here it is. Here is let's read the meaning of it. I don't want to take so much time. God has heard the woman who argues with you regarding her husband, and she complains to God. God hears the argument between you. God is here, seer. بس سمع الله قول التي تجادلك في زوجها وتشتكي إلى الله. It continues. And then here is the second verse. He is critical of me for translating that way. الذين يظاهرون منكم من النساء, those who do zihar from min nisa'ihim, their women. Let's say, I don't know, X. Keep it zihar. Doesn't matter. The meaning become obvious. Here it is. Let's read. Those among you have, instead of estrange their women, let's leave it. Those among you who do X their wives. Let's say we don't know it is estrangement. Zihar means back. Or support back. Or say your back is like my mother's back, something like that. But this is, let's say, we learn it from dictionary. And dictionaries assume that it is like hadith, which is not. But let's assume all of this. We say we don't know estrangement. Those among you who ex their wives by saying to them, you are as my mother. They can never be as their mothers, for their mothers are the women who gave birth to them. Indeed, they are uttering what is strange and falsehood. God is partner giving. Okay? They say X, they turn their wives to their mothers by word. They say this, they say X. We don't know the meaning of X. And they say, you are like my mother. And by this way, they estrange them. And God says, no, this is your word. By just word, you cannot doom yourself and your families to estrangement. Therefore, with one word, you cannot change the reality. That's it. What we learn is obvious. You don't need the meaning of X even. It is an extra. In fact, it emerges. If you are a critical thinking, from the context, you can tell the meaning of X. For example, give you one example. The meaning of salat. What does salah means? Here is a verse in the Quran. وَمَا صَدَّقَ وَمَا صَلَّى وَلَكِنْ كَذَّبَ وَتَوَلَّى. From here I can tell, without knowing the meaning of salah, I can tell the meaning of salah by using my mind, God-given mind. Al-aql, reasoning. Rules of inference. The verse says, he didn't acknowledge, saddaqa, acknowledge, accept the truth. Did not support the truth. Did not accept. وَمَا صَدَّقَ وَمَا صَلَّى, and did not salla. We don't know the meaning of salla. And he did not do the X. And then the following verse is the antonym. وَلَكِنْ, but, كَذَّبَ, denied, rejected. The opposite of saddaqa. Saddaqa means acknowledge. كَذَّبَ means reject. Consider as a lie, reject. And then كَذَّبَ وَتَوَلَّى. Tawalla becomes the antonym of salla. Tawalla, turn back, turn away, turn away. Therefore, salah must be turn face, support, acknowledge, relate, connect. Exactly. Within the context of the Quran, salat means connection with God, turning your face to God, asking help from God, be solidarity with God. And salah al-jumu'ah means be solidarity with people, connect with people. Simple. Context you can easily understand. I don't need even dictionaries for this word from the context. But even I need dictionary, I will critically look at the dictionary because it is the language spoken by every sect and even religion and non-religious people. Within the sect, you can easily change a lot of things, make up a lie, just attribute it to a big guy in the past. That's it. That's all it takes. To make up a rule or to create a prohibition, still it is made up. It's easy. But changing the meaning of a word is not that easy. But this gentleman is a professor somewhere, and here it is. Let me show you something. Please check 19.org. Here there is a manifesto for Islamic reform. You can download it also. And check also the Quran Reformist translation. Here I want to show. Do you see it here? Okay. This anonymous scholar, I want to talk about this one. How killed this book? First, let's see. Reza Aslan says, a bold and beautiful translation that serves as a timely reminder to all believers that the Quran is not a static scripture but a living, breathing, ever-evolving text whose sacred words are as applicable today as when they were first uttered by the Prophet Muhammad 14 centuries ago. Irshad Manjiz, Qasim Ahmed, Gershom Kuprisi, Mark Sykes, Rifat Hassan, Aisha Musa, Jermaine Huston, Janer Taslaman, Amina Wadud, Gatot Adisoma, and Jeff Garrison, Colorado, and a reader. Anyway, let's see what the reader said. Thank you. I am coming back because of your work. Edip, your work has freed me from years of condemnation, cruelty, and misinterpretation of Islam by my ex-husband. Your work has freed me from the pain I have carried for so long and gave me back basic self-esteem that was mine from God, but was slowly eroded by misogyny. Your work gave me the wings I had lost. Thank you again. There are many, many this kind of letters. But here it is, this guy who is exactly like it, who is hired by those in power and who killed the publication of this book. Here it is. Palgrave in 2006 this is their catalog, Palgrave Macmillan. And there are many books here. This is their catalog. This is the new book coming. And they were ready to print. They even invited me to New York. They were very excited about this translation. Got very good review from scholars, some of them that I showed you a moment ago. But at the last moment, one scholar, we don't know, who is he? CIA or a guy like this? A guy like this, scoundrel. Hiding his name, he said, this is really distortion, this is like Salman Rushdie scared them, and that's it. Whoever this guy, mostly from high above, vetoed this one. Despite all the great endorsement I had, the very book is discussing the issue. Any reasonable person read it. It's a scholarly book. It's a wonderful voice. Should be heard. But unfortunately, the fatwa of this scholar, whoever this person, or maybe working for CIA or for Saudi Arabia, and that was the Palgrave fellow. They didn't give me his name. Kamal, the name of the editor, Kamal, last name, I think, she didn't give me the name, and later she forgotten. And I'm still curious if anyone in Palgrave, if remembers this one, please check who is this anonymous scholar, Sunni scholar, who is described by the editor of Macmillan, a very well-established professor, very well paid, sold his soul like this one, like Jonathan Brown. His name is Jonathan Brown. I want to make sure. I just recently I saw this guy name. Yes, Jonathan Brown. Works for Al-Walid bin Talal, chair of Islamic. He's paid handsomely to distort the facts, to peddle lies. And he never faces people like me. He's in his ivory tower, protected from people like me. And he easily, deceptively dismisses my work by a lie and get away with it. And here it is. Let me tell you a story. I'm I want to cover my address. This is in fact old address. Okay, here it is. I wrote this letter for job application in 1999, 20 years ago, for a professorship in Department of Middle Eastern Languages and Cultures at the University of Texas at Austin. Upon insistence of Professor Kurzman, he was there that time, Kurzman. He knew about my work. That time I didn't have book, I didn't have even translation of the Quran. But I have Turkish errors in the translations of the Quran, and I have some articles, published articles. And he looked at my work, he knew about my Turkish work, and then he knew that I would be a great asset there. And I know also Arabic, Persian, Turkish languages. My father was the biggest scholar in Turkey, and I have debate with top scholars. And he knows about my that I would be a great professor there. And they said, if there is an opening, I am the head of the committee which decide, and I would like you to apply for a position, and you will be 100% there. He was that sure. I said, no, I know about the politics by then, but upon his instances, I applied. Guess what? About a month later, he called back to me. Let me check Kurzman. Yeah, this one, Charles Kurzman. He's a good guy. Anyway, he called me back. He says, Edip, I don't know what is his position. This revelation may put him in difficulty because I am telling something on the phone, he told me. He says, Edip, I'm very sorry that we were not able to hire you for the position which I wanted you to apply. Why? I said, I knew it. He said, well, he said, Jewish people opposed because they saw some of your writing critical of Israel's oppression of Palestinians. And therefore, they objected. And we get a lot of funding through some Jewish foundations. I don't know, maybe from Israel. And therefore, but I thought that the Muslims, with Muslim, and they say usually Saudi and Kuwait and stuff, and they would accept it, and they, by this way, the number of votes will be in your favor. But they oppose because of your criticism of Hadith and Sunnah and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and all together. And therefore he said, I was alone, I couldn't make it happen. That's it. It's all political. If you are licking the boots, kissing the whatever, I'm not going to utter those words, like this gentleman, you will be hired to position, not because you know, not because you are seeking the truth, not because you are honest, just because you are a good liar, because you sell your soul. I'm challenging now to the students. If you are a student of Jonathan Brown, I want you in the classes raise question. You criticize him based on Zuhar, on one word, but you ignored all these corrections in his translation. I give in the beginning only 15 examples, that they are numerous. Like, they translate the word beat woman, which is not. There are in fact 4 keywords in chapter 434 they mistranslate. Based on the usage of the Quran of those words, I show that and argue by evidence that it is a mistranslation. It means leave women before divorcing them. Separation, it is temporary separation from women. And there are also Qawamu Ahli Behtihi, they translate as they are kind of leader of the house, but in fact it means they are bread earners. And Nushuz also as if obedience to God. No, 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 no. It is not. It is a anyway. The hand, thief's hands cut off, chop off. This is another mistranslation. And I showed the Quran, the very usage of qata 8, it means several things, but somehow they always pick the wrong ones that contradicts with others. And this is jizya, as been translated as levying taxation, extra taxation of non-Muslims, which contradicts the verse of the Quran. There is no compulsion in religion. In fact, it creates financial duress. But it is mistranslation. It is war reparation. Jizya means compensation, war reparation. It has nothing to do with religion of people. It has to do with unjustified war that cost lives and property. And this is one of the worst translation. My battery is finishing. Anyway, I will be done here. And this is another mistranslation about marrying the orphans. That basically pedophilia is justified through mistranslation. It is about marrying their mothers. And this is one of the most mistranslated one about description of women. In fact, progressive leading women, and these are responsive and leaders active in their societies, and they are turned to fasting women, which has nothing to do with the meaning of word. Or darb riqab, they say chop their necks, which has nothing to do with neck, riqab. Raqab is means the control center, means command center. Raqaba, raqib, muraqaba comes from the same word, has nothing to do with unuq, but they mistranslate. Or Muhammad was illiterate according to them. It is another mistranslation. And but I have extensive discussions, prove that this is, and this is one of the worst things, abrogation in the Quran. They create contradictions in the Quran because they don't understand the Quran or distort the Quran, and they say the verses abrogate each other. Basically, they delete many verses of the Quran. They reject the meaning of many verses of the Quran. This is about miracles, ayat, singular form. Always it means miracle, sign, has nothing to do with the verse of the Quran when it's in singular form, 84 places. And another mistranslation, too many of them. Anyway, my challenge is, my challenge is for debate. Ask him to debate with me and invite me to your schools. If you see scoundrels like them, and they are promoting Hadith and Sunnah, say, what about Edip, come here and expose him there. Here is your chance. And this is an issue right now in the Muslim world. Millions of people discussing this issue. And many people, according to you, are confused by this. Why not? This guy is open for discussion, public debate. Therefore, invite me. If they don't invite me, you question me. And this one is an interesting one. Did I show you? I don't remember. This is by my professor. This describes, this is the law review with no footnote, the only law review with no footnote by Professor Robert Williams, and Vampires Anonymous, about professors.